Hello, everyone. Welcome to the GLORIO Chat, the best anime podcast on the internet. You know, I was going to make some kind of like tariff joke at the beginning of this episode and how, we might have to delay our next episode or something. I'm like, I'm too tired. I'm just too tired. Everything is so bad. Can we just, like, I don't even want to joke about it anymore. Let's just talk about some anime, maybe some video games or something. I don't know, guys.
Because I'm paying by the minute to be on this podcast now.
Yes, that's right. Every minute that anybody outside of the US is going to be on the podcast, I have to pay you extra, right?
No, we pay you. That's how tariffs work, right?
Well, it's both ways now because it's reciprocal, right? Anyway,
Don't worry, guys. We just do what everybody else does. We offload the cost to the users. All right? So, to all you lovely listeners, starting today, the rates for listening to the GLORIO Chat have gone up by, let me check my notes here, 49%.
Yep. So
that also applies if you're a penguin, no exceptions.
Oh God, 13 years in, we'll finally open a Patreon. Yes. Anyway, yes, things are bad, but we can escape to the world of anime.
Can we?
Where things are also bad.
Where things are also bad. Well, there's at least one show on here I liked, or two shows depending on time, how much time.
Let's see how we go.
Talk about. But yes, so we're in a bit of a weird spot with this episode where we're sort of in between seasons, I guess. So we have a couple of things to clean up from last season, and there have been some new shows that have come out. Some that are probably currently coming out as we're
new shows are literally airing as we are recording this.
Yes, so there's a few that have made it out that we will talk about, time permitting, here. So we'll probably have a bit of a hybrid episode here. But before we do that, let me introduce everyone. I'm Jel. I'm joined by Iro.
I'm still here. I'm not dead yet. Even
still
if I'm stuck on a whole different planet.
And we are joined by G.
It's actually good for society to play Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition at 12 frames per second on the Nintendo Switch 1.
Yep, it gives you some perspective.
In fact, I think it'll be good for us, actually. I think society as a whole should endure the next 12 months of suffering caused by playing that game at generously double-digit frame rates, because the economy will explode like nothing you've seen.
Once we plant all these Frontier Nav probes, the money's just going to roll in.
I love how I said I didn't want to make tariff jokes, and that somehow spawned more tariff jokes.
I mean, we could turn this into a Xenoblade Chronicles X segment instead if you'd like.
Well,
TLDR, I really like that game. I would like it even more if it ran at least a stable 30.
Well, if you've got $1,000 for your Switch 2 now, you can play a better version on there, right? Or
don't test me, Jel. I am at that precipice. I am like, yes, come to me, my $1,000 Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition machine.
Yep. You can jump on that and Bloodborne 2, right?
Yes.
Anyway, I guess we are also joined by Zig.
I am here to demand my own tariff, actually, and it is that I demand my own 45-minute segment where I get to talk about Gundam.
All right. I
actually got
90 seconds.
I actually got to see Gundam in the cinema because it came to the UK for a change, but I wasn't on the last podcast because it wasn't. It's all right. Okay, done. I mean, we'll talk about it more once the actual first episode comes out.
You have nothing to say about the mass production of the Big Sam?
I mean, it changed the course of the war, obviously.
It did. It sure did. Dawson was a visionary.
The only thing I will say is that for an hour-plus movie, I sure didn't learn a lot about anything about that story.
Yep.
And boy, is that worrying for a one-cour show.
Yeah, when I heard you guys talk about that on the last podcast, I was gobsmacked because I was like, I guess this pace could be okay if they're going for a full 50 episodes, but man, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, is there still the possibility that they could just do it? They split it and have another core later or something. I don't know.
There is a
But-
precedent for that. I promise this will not become an actual Gundam segment. This is just the one example I'll bring up. Is I believe Gundam 00 was actually kind of planned to be a one-season show, a 26, and by that I mean 26 episodes.
And technically, Witch from Mercury took a season off, right?
Iron-Blooded Orphans. Also,
Well, Iron-Blooded Orphans, I believe, was announced to be a full 50 from the beginning, right?
was it? Okay. I just
Oh,
remember
actually,
they
you
took
know,
a break for a
They did.
while.
Taking a break is normal. I guess what I mean
I think
is
they didn't announce the second season until like the end of the first season.
you could be right. My bad.
Didn't
Yes.
wasn't
there's
Gundam
a
00
sliver-
a 100
sliver of
episode show, or am I getting
No,
mixed
I mean
up
it
there?
has like a bunch of movies and OVAs, but
But like Seed is a 100 episode show.
well, that's because it's two. Technically, it is Seed and Seed Destiny, which are
Yes,
two distinct
yes,
50 episode shows, which is truly one of the greatest crimes that Japan has ever inflicted
Anyway,
on the world. But
the only anecdote I will offer is that for the first 5 minutes of the movie, it was projected in the wrong aspect ratio, which meant you could see
Oops.
what was going on, but all the subtitles were cut off.
oh no.
Well, it's fine. I'm sure you have all the dialogue from the first episode.
Well,
yeah, you
yes,
watched
memorized.
Fortunately, it is a fairly famous scene that film
Yes.
opens with. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I enjoyed some of it. I have my doubts about considerably more of it. Let's say.
Save us, Suramaki.
The jury's out on that one, is what I will say. But yes. All right. Well, for today's episode, I'm sure we'll have another 40 minutes to spend on Gundam on another episode at some point. But for today's episode, let's wrap up a couple of things, the few things that we were still watching from last season, and we can put a bullet in them, I guess.
Let's go down all the shows we are still hate watching for some reason.
Yeah. Well, okay. The first one, I would not consider this hate watching.
Sure.
It just is, perhaps not a very ambitious show. And that is, of course, Sorairo Utility, the golf girl show. And I didn't think I was going to have a lot to say until I got to the last episode, because they did the thing where they tie up all the story points and everything by the penultimate episode, and then there's just nothing to do in the last episode. And I don't know how intentional this was or not, but this is I guess they left it open to bring in Akira Amamiya himself to direct the final
Brought
episode.
the big dog.
Oh, nice.
We've talked about how this show has Trigger DNA with people formerly from Trigger and probably ultimately Gainax working on it, and they brought in Akira Amamiya of Inferno Cop and Gridman fame to direct the last episode. And you told this to me later, but I already was thinking it as I was watching it, because the man has a style. And by style, this is the moody Gridman Dynazenon type of style, where
Really, not goofy
Fascinating.
Amamiya.
it's a little bit of a mix. There's some
Okay.
goofy scenes, but there's also a lot of staring up into the sky with nothing but cicadas in the background.
Thinking about what golf means.
Because
Is anyone immune to bullets?
no, we don't go full Inferno Cop at any point. There's a couple. It's more there's a couple of lifeguards staring into the screen type of
Okay,
gags.
good.
But it's a split between that and the more pensive things, right?
Interesting.
So because the premise of the last episode is the main girl wants to play golf, but nobody's available, so she has to go play golf by herself and has time to think about her journey and all that. And,
Huh. Okay.
yeah,
That is a very Amamiya coded premise for an episode.
yeah, and in the end, she appreciates her new friends and everything, and it's kind of it was kind of nice. I like how I've talked about one thing I appreciated with the show is the main girl is not some golf prodigy that is just amazing,
Right.
becomes amazing at golf. She's definitely better than she was at the beginning, obviously, because she's been playing golf, but she's still not a good golfer. So like her whole like goal at the end, her like big championship moment was, can I make par on one hole, right? And she, the whole thing is like she finally does it and just barely gets par on one hole, but nobody's there to see it. And she's all lonely and everything, but then of course she meets up with her friends later, and everything's going to be great because they'll all be together golfing forever, and it's very sweet. But yes, you can probably see how you could get some moody Amamiya type of
I'm actually really
vibes.
Curious then. Like watching this episode, like Gel, was it almost like a bittersweet window into like I guess what I'm really asking is like is kind of your takeaway on Sorairo Utility as a whole is like, was this episode almost a like bittersweet window in like what the show could have been from the start? Is this even what you would have wanted? Like an Akira, like is this what you would have wanted? Akira
Amamiya's Sorairo
Utility? Like, can this show even carry the weight of something like that without it devolving into a joke, intentional or unintentional?
That is a good point, Zig. I don't know if they could keep this up for the entire series because he was working with nothing on this.
Yeah, I was going to say
there was no meat here whatsoever.
I was saying, can they keep it up for one episode? Because honestly,
he managed to deliver for one episode. I don't know if you could keep this up for an entire. Okay. Like at one point they did have to like sneak in a cameo from I guess a real life golf influencer.
Sure. Of course.
Because the one of the three girls is a golf influencer on Instagram, and they brought in a real golf influencer from Instagram, which of course that's a real thing. And, I had to do some research on who she was, but yes. So there was a weird bit kind of like shoehorned in with that where she's like, hi, I'm this person and I'm doing absolutely nothing other than coming on here and saying that I'm here.
Just incidentally, there has also been a recent arc in Kamen Rider about a pudding influencer, and it's one of the most transparently blatant how do you do fellow kids moments in quite a while. And that's really saying something for a Kamen Rider show.
Right, which is literally for kids, but yes. Yeah, so it was pretty good. It was a pretty good final episode and kind of an interesting, I guess somebody called in a favor and at the end, and overall it was like I enjoyed the show. It was fine. I would probably forget about it by next week. Maybe some every now and then I will, lovingly remember the eye catches.
Yeah, just remember those old guys. Yeah.
They had their cameo in the end. Like it was a good joke, but you could see it coming from a mile away. Where she can't find anybody else to play golf, and then the three old guys show up, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we're not doing," because they're retired. They're not doing anything, right? So they're like, "Oh yeah, let's go play golf," and then of course they immediately hurt their backs again. Right?
Yep. Of course.
As I'm saying it, if you guys remember the joke from before,
if there's one thesis to all of our collective work on the blog over the past 10 plus years, it's that there should be more anime about old guys. Honestly,
they're pretty prominent in this. Most of their episodes are kind of the best episodes.
Yeah. There should be more anime about old guys, says collection of old guys.
Right. Yeah. Sure.
But no, I mean that honestly, like, I mean, I based on your description, Jill, I mean, yeah, I don't know if it's like a show I would ever actually go back to check out. I don't know if there's enough there for me, but I will say, I think holistically, thematically, I actually really like at least the themes you were kind of mentioning in this last episode of like, there is value in doing something badly. Like, I think that's something that like, like, I don't want to go full preachy. This is the lesson the kids need to hear, but it's like, obviously, again, not to get too real with it, right? But obviously, as an artist, there's been a lot of talk about like the value of art and the value of like, or the value, the value of doing anything, right? Is like, and it's like, is the value found in the end product or is the value found in the process, right? And I think I can appreciate one of these shows because I feel like many of these types of shows, right, where I am listless and wandering through life, and then I discovered the guitar, or I discovered the Honda Super Cub, or I discovered whatever it is, right?
Power tools,
and I immediately became the best at it, right?
Yeah, and it's like I kind of can appreciate a show that's like, and the thing I discovered, I'm not even that good at it. And I like that. Honestly, I truly, actually, really, really like that.
Yeah.
I think that's a big part of when I say the show is very charming. I think that's part of it because like it's not it strays away from the typical sports anime or the club. It's more of a club anime than a sports anime, right?
Right.
I've come in and I'm now the best at this, and we're now going to go play at Budokan.
Gumbo right our way to the top.
Gumbo right away to the top.
Yeah, and
I'll come
like
at it I'll come at it from a slightly different angle, which is I think it's incredibly important for any creative endeavor to have a steady stream of 3-star media, stuff that's just all right that can be fun and fluffy and disposable, and this definitely sounds like it falls into that camp.
Yeah. Yep, it's very charming. There's some nice there's like some occasional like really funny bits and some nice animation. It's just it's a good 3-star anime, as you say, Zig. I think so. Fun times. All right, well, we got our warm up out of the way. You guys want to tell me how Zenshu ended?
I wish it was a 3-star anime.
Man, that would be. Could you imagine the world where Zenshu was a 3-star anime?
Woo!
Man. Whew. Like
there'd be
like, man, the world where like Iro and I are like, yo, and like when QJ like got tied or something. It's like, man, it's no. This is like
fucking the most bog standard, like uninteresting ending possible. I think
as you go back to the real world.
Yes.
Yeah, of course.
That's like
of course.
Like that's like the one novel thing, as fucked up as it is.
I think the last time we talked to this on podcast, I like laid out a potential ending for this show that was substantially more interesting than what actually happened.
Right.
That rings a bell, yeah.
But yeah, it's just a summarizer. Here's the thing: we probably actually don't have that much to say about Zenshu in the end, right? It's because like the reason why I decided to stick with it is because of those initial framings of the idea of like what motivates creative work and like how does one get through burnout and how and all that stuff, right? And also the like surprisingly canny animation send-ups, right? Like getting Itano himself to like storyboard a sequence in this show. And by the end of the show, a lot of that just gets thrown out the window in favor of like the most like generic like fantasy romance, like and also the most generic platitudes about creative work. Like that's probably the thing that actually like sticks in my craw a lot more is like the end
nothing
of
to say about the whole entire thing, right?
Like the end of Zenshu just kind of basically gets at this whole like no matter it's a classic, like no matter how much like causality is a river, no matter how much you try to divert from it, it will always return to like the flow, right? So no matter how much Natsuko like alters the events of A Tale of Perishing, like the causality of the isekai world must self-correct towards the original ending of the story. And so it's like but so because you like delayed all the tragedy of this story for so long, it's now all getting like backloaded into the end and getting like hyper like charged and everybody it's like it's like now it's over, like everybody's dying in droves left and right. It's horrible, cats and dogs raining from the sky, and it's like, and I guess it's kind of meant to be your like belly of the whale moments, like we're all in despair. Natsuko's drawings aren't working anymore. Like what do we do? The heroes are dying one by one, and and it's like, and then it kind of just all culminates in like Natsuko, like why did you
believe
start drawing?
In yourself?
And it's like, oh right, I started drawing because my first love was A Tale of Perishing. Like, and it's like, and that's why I'm an artist. And then she comes back.
Wow, that sounds so boilerplate.
It sucks.
Yeah, it sucks. And then twist. The last thing she draws is Luke Braveheart himself, right? So she just draws, the thing she can draw better than anything else. Her husbando, her childhood husbando, Luke Braveheart.
But he's super jacked and wearing a thong for some reason.
I know, weird, yeah. Wow. See, here's the thing. That would have actually been like kind of clever if it was like, here's like my OC hyped up version of Luke Braveheart.
Here's my like Omega-verse AU version of Luke.
Yeah, right.
He has like cat ears or something.
You know, he's a few inches taller, a little bit buffer. There's a note here that's like, what was the Gogol 13 thing? By all accounts, an impressive penis or
correct,
whatever.
Yes. The thing we must mention every time Duke Togo comes up.
Yes.
Like that version of Luke Braveheart.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it isn't, right? That's all it is. It's just, oh yes, this was my first love, and this is why I make things. And she saves the world, rewrites reality to turn a tale of perishing into a happy ending through the power of her love. But oh no, she must return to her world, and she goes back. And the movie,
she'll never forget. Yeah,
she'll never forget the friends she made along the way. The movie is a huge success. She's on.
She can write her love story now because she understands love. Is that?
Yes, we're on to bigger and better things. Now she knows how to work together with her studio. And but who's that off across the street?
Yep.
Who's that man in a red cape? But this is the real world. I must be imagining things, but I could have sworn. Isn't that? And then the end, and it's like, wow.
Wow, they made the ending of Angel Beats even cornier.
Yeah, basically. It's bad. It
sucks. It had no, like, narrative value in the end. I don't know.
Yeah. I kind of hate to say that.
No, sorry, go on, Jay.
No, you go for a second.
I was going to say, did they at least turn the animation dial up again at the end, or...
Yeah, it I mean, for better or
sure,
worse,
just in
ways I don't. A very good-looking show,
Yeah,
sure.
I just also didn't care about the content of it, so it's like
right because there weren't animation references anymore, right? It was no longer here's Tiger Mask and the Atano Circus and the last shooting. Now it's just kind of just generically good. Right. And that's not to disrepute the skill of the people who made this, but it's just like generically good looking anime, but like without any like narrative hook. It's very hard. Like, I think we're all at this point in our anime watching lives where like good animation alone is just not enough to like
not for an entire series. It's not going to
not through an entire series. Like maybe good enough to watch an AMV, but like none of us are going to be like, wow, the story's terrible, but the animation is good. Like I think so. So it didn't really add much. And yeah, anyways, just to summarize, it's just like, in some ways, Zenshu is like the dark mirror to Sorairo Utility. Like, if you're talking about like, Sorairo Utility is like this kind of fluffy, substanceless show that like doesn't really have anything that like grand to say, but like is inoffensive and entertaining and like comforting to watch. Zenshu is like the opposite, like the dark mirror to that of like it thinks it has a lot of big things to say, but like it's all like net zero in the end.
Yeah.
I mean, a show that thinks it's smart is always infinitely more annoying than a show that knows it's stupid.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, it's finally over, though, right?
It's finally over.
You guys can move on.
I can. After this podcast, I don't know that I'll ever think about that show again.
You guys can move on to watching a new.
Sometimes it's not bad, but
you guys can move on to watching a new show that you hate every week.
Oh yeah, can't wait.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of shows, I think they're smart. Or is it smart, Jel? Did it become smart in the end?
Well, yeah. Let's talk about, for one last time, Orb on the Movements of the Earth. If you've been listening the past 2 seasons, you know I kind of hate this show, but God, I'm too fascinated to look away.
Hey, that's not nothing.
Full disclosure, I did not actually watch every single episode in the final stretch here. I kind of skimmed through the things that Artemis summarized last time. I feel like this show, like, I hate the moment-to-moment stuff so much that I kind of wish I could just read a plot summary and
I wonder if it plays better in manga form.
Maybe it's better in manga form, I don't know. But I did watch the final, like, 2 episodes, which is the last arc, where we switch protagonists one more time. So where we left off, if you recall, Kenjiro Suda finally died in a burning church, which is better than he deserved. And I watched some of that episode.
Did you set the fire?
I wish, right? But I watched his final scene because it was kind of important, because they do... they do something kind of unexpected, because this show, as you know, up to this now has been very dry and clinical and everything, right?
Yep.
And they start to get a little abstract in the final stretch of episodes, where as Kenjiro Suda is dying, he sees the kid from the first arc, the original protagonist that committed suicide in front of him way back in like episode 3 or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And they have this big, completely insufferable philosophical conversation that literally ends with Kenjiro Suda like, "Oh, I guess I'm the villain," and then dies. He literally says, I guess I'm the villain. Like, that's the words he uses. I'm not paraphrasing.
Jesus Christ. Yeah.
But we haven't had anything like that up to this point, where people are having visions or whatever, right? And I saw some people like try to speculate, is he still alive? No, he's not still alive. He was standing in a burning fire. He was still the same age. Like it was supposed to be some kind of vision or hallucination or whatever, right? So
dying dream thing.
Yes. What's a little bit weirder is the final like 2 episodes, I think. We get introduced to our last protagonist, who is this guy named Albert, and he is smart enough to go to university but doesn't want to go, and he eventually, after talking it out with this priest who makes him revisit some memories, he decides to go to university. And the kind of interesting thing with that is we get a flashback to he thinks about his original tutor, and in the flashback his original tutor is the kid from the first arc. Again,
of course.
This I do not think there's more speculation about this, because it almost makes a little more sense that, is he really, did he survive or whatever. I still think this is supposed to be like I think at this point he's supposed to represent a certain ideal, right, of the spirit that's carried all of these people to risk their lives.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that makes sense in abstract, but it's like the way you're describing it is kind of confusing, because this new protagonist has no direct connection to this original kid, right?
Right. And
whereas Kenjiro Suda at least knew the guy,
right.
And
yeah. So I think it's more of a narrative device for the audience, right? Because now the audience is it, but it's just a weird. It's a weird choice, because like they have not used that kind of storytelling up to now, right? Like, I don't know, it's a bit strange. And like they leave enough open to where, because like he does appear, he's like older in the flashback, and like he's a little bit older, but the timeline still doesn't work out, because the kid died what would have been 35 years ago, and this guy's supposed to be 23. They explicitly give his age and everything. So like the timeline doesn't really work out either. Even if he did survive and was, maybe 10 years older, it still wouldn't add up. So I think it's still supposed to be like and then it gets really weird, because then like the kid kills his father, which I'm not even sure that was real. It was a little weird, right? And I don't know, it was strange. But this all culminates to the answer that I wanted is, how is this? Are they going to tie this back to real history, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they reveal, and perhaps in the most appropriate way for the show, the final epilogue is all just white text on black screens.
Oh baby!
Where they
hell yeah,
I love Xenogears.
They literally just tell you that this Albert guy is a guy is our first actual real historical figure. It is Albert Brzezowski, who would be a teacher that would I guess Copernicus was one of his students at some point.
Gotcha.
And that's the connection to real history that they finally make. And they try to hammer down the whole there were all these people that history forgot that led up to this moment. Okay. And they all gave their lives for this noble cause, and I'm like, all right, whatever. And it's just this show just really pisses me off, because like it's very ambitious, there was so much potential. It mentions a lot of interesting themes, but doesn't actually engage like emotionally with any of them.
Right.
Right. We've talked about in the past about like the, what are you willing to die for? The concept of, going against the church concept of living for the afterlife, and then versus, appreciating the beauty of the world that we live in now. And then the people that we don't know about in history that time have forgotten. Like there's so many like cool things going on here, and none of it landed for me at all. Like from an emotion, like you could very easily make an emotional connection with those themes, and there's just nothing. I feel nothing.
That's a shame.
Watching
I mean,
show.
I think historical fiction has so much potential to like really, like, because even if it is not history you are familiar with, just the premise of this is real, or quote unquote brackets real, like the way you can pull on the emotion in a way that pure fiction sometimes can, or not cannot, but like knowing
the idea is
real,
right? The idea is real, even if the story is not.
Right, like there's sort of a bought-in resonance because you subconsciously know that this is like something that happened in real life, right?
Right. These are questions that happened. Like these are things that happen, not the specific events, but these are ideological conflicts that existed in real life, right?
And so it's kind of a shame when it kind of falls flat. I mean, I guess that's better than I was about to make the joke of like, okay, like does the show end with a post-credit scene, like some real MCU shit where like this Albert character is a teacher, and one of his students drops his ID, and he's like, "Hey, you dropped this." It picks it up and says, "Galileo Galilei. That's a weird name."
No, they didn't. They didn't even attempt that. They literally pulled up the black screen white text that said, "In 1468, Albert, whatever, took on a student named Nicholas Copernicus," and
I mean, is it even really anime if like the evil Pope does not show up and has crazy magical powers or something?
Yeah.
This sounds to me like a show that had a lot of really good ideas and some really poor execution. Is that like roughly correct, would you say?
Absolutely. And I think it boiled down to a lot of the I was trying to figure out, like, just in trying to do some critical analysis here, like why this didn't work for me compared to something like, say, Legend of the Galactic Heroes, which if you write out on paper, their presentation style are very similar, right? There's a lot of like people talking about like just philosophical concepts.
Right, like literally the only thing different Legend of the Galactic Heroes would have done at the end is it would have had a black and white like drawing of a guy next to the white text on a black background.
And the white text would have said, "Sometimes dictatorships are good."
It would have had a historian do a documentary.
Right, that's what it would do. A historian once said.
Yes,
but
historians would.
So I was trying to think about it, and I think there is, more of a human connection in Legend of Galactic Heroes in that I feel like they are more, I don't know, talking more directly about the nature of how humans behave and how that bleeds into politics and war and things like that. And whereas at the end of the day, yes, this show was talking about like what is it worth, what are you willing to die for, what are the things that are worth dying for and everything. And at the end of the day, it was heliocentrism. And I mean, that's important, but like
it's harder to like personally.
It's very hard for me to make an emotional connection to feel like, yes, we must defend heliocentrism at all costs.
The thing is, a good show could make you care about heliocentrism.
Right. So you could have very easily spun this into the like standing up against the church and and get it, in which they kind of like gesture at, but the way the characters talk is always like holding heliocentrism up as like this like amazing thing that must be protected at all costs, and like I like connecting with just that by itself is like really difficult.
I mean, it sounds to me a lot like the characters are first and foremost mouthpieces for ideas rather than characters, and it doesn't work that way, right?
Absolutely.
They've got to be the other way round.
Yeah.
When you care about the characters, then the things they say become important, but you can't force that.
Yeah, everybody's a mouthpiece in this show is a good way to put it. It's I feel like, I think I said this at one point, I feel like the author just wanted to write a book about heliocentrism, like just like a straight up nonfiction.
I mean,
like
Jel, you don't
research.
read a ton of manga, right? Like, let me tell you, there are so many manga that just feel like this is a thing I learned about recently, and I'm just gonna make my whole manga about that
whole like Hannibal versus Scipio.
Yeah. Like there's that manga. Yeah.
I mean, let us not forget the mother and father of all I learned a cool thing, let me write a manga about it, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
I mean, God, like I am slowly making my way through Twin Peaks right now, and like just realizing, like, God damn it, Part 4 is just Twin Peaks. It's just Twin Peaks. You just copied Twin Peaks, Araki.
I don't know. There's fewer baguettes in Part 4.
Yeah. Well, anyway. I'm just disappointed with that show because it had so much potential. But
I'm disappointed you're disappointed because, I am a historian. I like it when anime is about smart, interesting, off the beaten track topics. And this sounds like it was about that. And they just didn't stick the landing, so to speak.
Yep.
Shame.
It is.
Alas.
All right. Well, that kind of does it for the last season shows, but we did want to finish off your guys' backlog shows because you did finish, right?
Yeah,
we did.
Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex and what are we calling it? How are we pronouncing it now?
Planetes.
Planetes. we'll do that for you.
You ain't gonna get me to say that. Sorry, it's too.
That's what the Kana says.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so yeah, you guys wrapped that up, and how did that go?
How did you feel about the end of the Standalone Complex where it's revealed that the Major is secretly Nicholas Copernicus?
Yep.
Well, Aero, do you want to start since you're the one who's...
Oh, man,
they're
good. It was good. I enjoyed seeing these things that I had never seen. I think Ghost in the Shell in particular was a thing because I've never seen any Ghost in the Shell. I still have not seen the Oshii movies either. Right?
Can I quickly clarify something? Did you do second gig as well? Or is it just
not yet?
We are going to move on to
sure. That. I just wanted
spoilers.
to get
that will be our next backlog project.
Sure, gotcha.
No, yes, it was only the first season. It was the Laughing Man stuff, and
yes,
it was a lot of. Oh yeah, that's where that's from. I see this whole Laughing Man thing. I see how this would be. I see why for the past 20 years I've been seeing people with Forma avatars of the Laughing Man symbol. Right?
Like, yeah, I think the really interesting thing about the Laughing Man and maybe Standalone Complex Season 1 as a whole is I guess even I have to echo some of Eero's sentiments that I think returning to Standalone Complex 20 years later, there's just. It's not even its fault, but there's just a lot of things Standalone Complex does that have been... Other works have picked up its torch and taken it to even more interesting places than Standalone Complex started. But I think it is fascinating to still watch, and to be clear, I am not saying Standalone Complex invents these cyberpunk concepts necessarily, but I think there's a lot that it does play with that. This may be one of the earliest cases in mass media of some of these specific things, right? The concept of hacking vision, the idea of reality becoming a tangible reality itself becoming a untrustworthy thing in the digital age, right? This is Standalone Complex is kind of in conversation with works like Metal Gear Solid 2.
Yeah. I mean, part of the curse of cyberpunk is that truly great cyberpunk is very timely because it's a commentary on current issues, right? And so part of the curse of cyberpunk is that, leaving aside a couple of truly seminal works, it doesn't tend to age as well as some other genres. And I'm not saying, I'm not saying that Standalone Complex is bad. It's been a few years since I saw it myself. But, part of the inevitability of commenting on current society is that things will change as current society changes.
Right. Unless you were speaking to such, unless you're speaking to such general topics like a Galactic Heroes does, right?
Yeah.
Where it feels tragically cyclical.
or like to use a classic like cyberpunk example, Blade Runner, right? Because Blade Runner speaks to the nature of the human condition, which doesn't change a great deal.
But because Standalone Complex kind of makes, in some ways, the admirable decision to get specific about its social commentary.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it ages better than others, or some of it has gone in more interesting places, for some reasons or other, right, in the time since. Right?
Yeah.
But I think overall, though, I definitely did appreciate coming back to Standalone Complex. I think when I watched it as a kid, we've always talked about, right, like the best time for a kid to watch a piece of media is like slightly before it's appropriate, and I think that was definitely Ghost in the Shell for me. I watched this show when I was a young teen, and so when I was a kid, I mostly appreciated it because the Major is a very attractive woman, and she shoots a cool gun, and there are
it seems to me that Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex would be something you could go back to later and see a lot more depth than you might have once. Right?
And that's kind of what I'm getting at, is like I remember as a kid like kind of getting the Laughing Man, but I was not fully immersed in like online culture yet, and so like I was not like a regular like user of forums and boards like at that age, and so like some of the Laughing Man stuff didn't really click for me. But like now in this very, very post-digital, this very digital age we live in, a lot of the Laughing Man stuff does feel very pertinent and prescient, and depressingly so in some ways. The themes of like the modularity of reality, like the ways in which humans can almost like willingly choose to delude themselves into believing a reality that better fits their preconceived notions. In a world where like data is just such an easy to manipulate thing.
Yeah.
I gotta get you guys to watch Gotcha Man Crowds.
Maybe
I tried when it came out. I should really try again.
We're hitting 10-year anniversary of the second season.
All right.
Yeah.
But also, like, to be clear, Standalone Complex also has like a really badass scene where like fascist Black Op goons like breach and clear a cyberpunk headquarters with their like 10-foot tall power armor mechs, and you get a cool scene where a bunch of the Tachikoma spider tanks fight one in
a certain sense,
the good cops versus the worst cops.
Yeah.
in a certain sense, Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex is kind of the perfect early 2000s piece of cyberpunk media, because it does have heady themes, but it also has extremely superficially cool shit happening a lot as well.
Yeah. And then that's like a thing it can only get away with because it has 26 episodes.
Right.
I checked through the episode list, and there are about 12 or 13 complex episodes as opposed to standalone episodes. And so it's like, if I picture this version of the show that is a one core show that is just the Laughing Man episodes all in a row, I'm not having a good time.
Right.
I think it's much worse show. Yeah.
This is something I think we have brought up repeatedly, what with the effective death of the 50-episode show and kind of the waning of the 26-episode show. Some shows need quote-unquote filler. Some shows need those episodes to build out, their theme, their atmosphere, their world, that kind of thing.
No, definitely. Just as an example, right? Like, I mean, Arrow, I'm not gonna like hit you with a pop quiz, like name all the members of Section 9, but like, would you tell me, like, after 26 episodes, you at least can like identify the important ones, right? Like, you can name them.
But the important ones, the Major, Bato, and Togusa, and the rest of, and then the rest of them.
Hey, don't forget about Chief Aramaki, of course.
Okay, yeah, you're right, Chief Aramaki.
But the point is, it's like, I remember when we first watched Ghost of the Stello Complex, and like they introduced all the members of Section 9, and Eero was like, yeah, this sure is like a lot of like cyberpunk cop guys, I guess, And I think it's like only with 26 episodes where like you focus on some of them, you kind of like, I'm not going to pretend like any of the Ghost in the Shell characters are like these like deep fonts of like storytelling, but like, good filler, good episodic storylines are like the building block of like of building the viewer's attachment to these characters, right?
I know that the one guy is the sniper guy.
Yes. Don't worry, he gets his focus episode.
I'm sure he does.
So
it's a really good episode.
So I have an interesting question then. After this, do you plan to go back and watch Ghost in the Shell?
At some point. You mean the Oshii movie, right?
Yes.
Yeah, the Oshii movie, and Innocence as well. But,
I would like to watch them at some point in the relatively near future.
The only thing I will say is that I would be very interested for you guys to do that because, you've seen Ghost in the Shell, right?
Yeah, I have seen both the Oshii films.
Yeah, so those films are very different from Standalone Complex, and so I would be fascinated to know.
And my understanding, go ahead. Sorry,
I was just going to say, with the context of Standalone Complex moving in some senses backwards to the original film, I would be interested to see what your reaction would be.
I mean, and my understanding is even though the films are very different from the manga. Right?
Correct.
Yes, very much so. And that's kind of the interesting thing about Ghost in the Shell, right? Is that Ghost in the Shell has never gotten a quote-unquote accurate adaptation. Like, for better or worse, the Oshii film kind of poisons the well for, like...
Proverbially, right? Yeah.
Proverbially.
Well,
because every subsequent Ghost in the Shell adaptation is in some way riffing on or a reflection of the Oshii film.
I mean, you're absolutely right, G. All of the subsequent films, even Innocence, is like something of a reflection of the original. The thing I would say is that I think the Oshii film is considerably better than the bits of the manga I've read.
I mean, that's a tough thing, right? Because like the manga, okay,
the manga's kind of a potboiler, really.
Like, okay, I conditionally respect Shiro Masamune a great deal. In the same way, and when I say conditionally, I mean that in the same way that I would say I respect people like Shoji Kawamori. And so it's like, this is the tough thing, right? Because the original Ghost of the Shell is, it's pulp, right? It's pulp sci-fi. Like it's
why it's
quote unquote
grittier than
and it's way more in line with like a bubblegum crisis or like a fucking a Dominion tank police, right?
Or it's even something like Dirty Pair, really.
Yeah, it's a schlocky cyberpunk action series.
Incredible art, but
great. I mean, again, like as I kept telling Iro, like have I preached the good word of Landmates? Yep. Have I talked about Landmates yet today?
Many times.
Landmates.
Yeah.
I mean, the original Oshii film is one of the definitive examples of a filmmaker imposing his signature style onto a piece of media.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I feel like that's all Oshii does.
Well, kind of, yes.
Well, okay, no. Oshii once knew how to do accurate adaptations, and it was called Pat Labor the Early Days.
Did he work on
All right.
Did he do that?
Well,
Oshii directs the first Pat Labor OVA.
Okay.
Perhaps we should steer the ship back out now that we hit Pat Labor.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Point is, Oshii once knew how to adapt things.
Yes.
And then I think the Christianity took over.
Wow.
No. In all seriousness, I am looking forward to doing second gig. I will say, despite it may not sound like our appraisal of Standalone Complex is that glowing, but watching it, like I was not 100% sure if I wanted to do second gig, but watching season 1, especially certain episodes, like whenever we reach like the real highlights of season 1. It really energized me. I was like, no, all right, we're doing second gig. We got to do second gig.
I mean, like my personal take is in line with most people, I think, which is that I don't think second gig is quite as good as the first season, but it's not like a horrifying drop off, really.
There are aspects of second gig I actually kind of like more than the first season.
Yeah, I mean, that's perfectly believable.
I guess we'll save that for when we actually get there. But
I'm glad you guys enjoyed it, though.
Yeah.
Also, Yoko Kanno's soundtrack.
Yep.
Always a killer, and we may talk later in this podcast about what the absence of Yoko Kanno does to your anime.
What lack of Yoko Kanno does to an MFR.
That's our podcast title right there.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of adaptations,
yes, Planet Tez
and well, Eero, I mean,
yes.
I guess I'll give the board to you again on this one.
Planet Tez, which I did end up going and reading the manga of this because I was curious, and actually, also the manga is actually quite short, and that was very interesting. Yeah. Go ahead.
So, spoilers. I also decided to read the manga.
Oh, okay, then yeah, it's wild. They're almost. We were just talking about Standalone Complex, like how it is very different from the original work, and in some ways imposes its own like values upon it. And I feel somewhat similarly about Planet Tez. The anime is so much more like takes so many of the concepts and scenes, individual moments in the manga, and like hammers them into the shape of a serial anime that must have a plot.
Well, not only that, but I think it almost I think it does this on both ends. It kind of expands,
yes,
in both directions, because there's not a lot of slice of life in the Planet Tez manga, whereas the first half of the anime is such a lovingly rendered depiction of blue collar work in space.
Mm-hmm.
And then it also expands in the other direction of the slight touching upon of the geopolitics of the story. Planets, the anime, it is almost like a Gundam OVA in all but name. In some essence, being an early 2000s Sunrise show.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
But maybe we should talk about the anime first, and then we can kind of get into the comparisons, right? Where, if you kind of heard us talk about it, there's kind of a reason why people don't talk about the back half of Planets much, and it's because, for better or worse, Planets gets a lot more political in its second half. A lot of the plot rests on the rise of a terrorist organization known as the SDF, the Space Defense Front, whose explicit stated goal is to end the first world hegemony of space-based economics and commercial enterprise. There's a constantly hammered point that all this expansion into space is solely pushed by capitalist enterprises, and that the only winners, so to speak, of all this space expansion will be the corporations and first world nations in the global west.
It's you can sell the power of humanity going to Jupiter to get unlimited energy from mining the helium. You can posture all you want about how it's the future and will change humanity forever, but the only people who will reap the benefits of that are the corps.
Right, exactly. And so the show kind of culminates in the SDF kind of performing this very ambitious hijacking operation of the Von Braun ship, which is the ship that they have been building to go to Jupiter. And in very class, and this is the part where this show was made by early 2000s Sunrise. The SDF's plan is to crash the Von Braun into Luna 2, the most populated city on the moon, unless their demands are met. That the resources earned on the Von Braun mission be distributed and not based on economic contribution to the Von Braun mission, but a population-based form of economic distribution. And the kind of wild thing about Planets is the terrorists' plan works. The United Nations stand-in gives into their demands and agrees to a more egalitarian distribution of wealth earned from the Von Braun mission. But this is all happening obviously in the background of the meat of these episodes, right? Which is how are our viewpoint characters being affected by this violent event. And I think broadly, Planets does some really interesting things with this that very much feel in line with like what you would expect to come from the person who would go on to write Vinland Saga. But it is maybe the inclusion of these concepts in a show that started off as like, haha, we're garbage men on the moon. Yep. You know, we whale with our harpoons. It's introducing them to that show that I think kind of like feels jarring.
Yeah. Yes, it is a strange tonal shift, and one that's like I understand why they would do that. Now that I have a wider context, I'm like, okay, I see why as you make more anime of this manga that's not done, why for the purposes of your 25 episode show, you make a climactic plot thing happen.
Right.
And it's like, okay, I get it. I don't have to like it that much because I think in some ways it is very. I mean, it is literally anime original ending in some respects, but it feels very anime original ending. Right. If you know what I mean.
It sounds like the show kind of undergoes a kind of complete gear change from low concept to high concept, if that makes sense. You know, like you're going from very small scale to very large scale storylines without necessarily a smooth ramp up. Would you say that's accurate? Or
the thing is, like, a lot of this stuff is like slowly introduced across the show, right? It's almost like a switch flips, but like, yeah, you're right that like it is almost like a switch flips. And it's like now we're focusing on this. It's like, okay, I guess we're now it's a drama about space politics and whether these characters can find love with each other or what have you. And it's fine. I think I enjoyed the first half of it more when it was more just slice of life work stuff.
Right.
And though, like, I understand how one might say of that it doesn't have a point or something, right? Like, what's the point of just slice of life work stuff without a statement to be made? It's like, I see why you would say that too, right?
And I would even go as far as, I mean, upon having read the manga now, I can kind of almost agree with the anime's decisions. Again, I don't think the execution was well done, but upon reading the manga, I actually almost come away with a slightly dimmer view of Makoto Yukimura, because the Planets manga has remarkably little to say.
It's so just like it's just like a lot of introspection, right?
Yeah,
it was his first major work.
It was, and it's like, you know, and so it's like I don't blame him for that, because obviously then he goes on to make Vinland Saga, which is kind of going through its own trials and tribulations at the moment. But like, I kind of see why the anime staff did what they did, because the manga, like, everything that the anime does, it's not like it rewrites things. Everything the anime does are plot points that are mentioned in the manga, but often in that very passive, like, oh yeah, there's economic disparity in space.
Now let's look out the window and think about what space means.
Right, exactly.
Ideologically.
Right, you know, it's the type of
on a certain level, I admire that, because I think that there's a certain bravery in storytelling to bring up big things that are happening in your world and then kind of deliberately background them in the same way that big things happen in the world for most of us in real life, but we're not necessarily intimately involved in them.
But I definitely see, I mean, and obviously, because he did both things, I see how we go from this to Vinland Saga, which has a lot of the same like thoughts and feelings behind it, but has a more cohesive like plot that makes it feel more personal, right?
Right. Yeah.
Compared to how Planetes does it, which is a lot of people sit around and think and look out at the stars.
Occasionally, they record podcasts.
Yep.
Last thing I'll say about the anime versus the manga. We'll say, wow, Fee Carmichael sure gets done dirty by the anime, huh? I mean, she's already one of the coolest characters in the anime, and then you read the manga and find out she's even cooler in the manga, which is really wild. It's like, wow. It's like, oh, like they try to neuter your powers in the anime, and the coolness of your character still shown through. And in the manga, you are even. I mean, yeah, it's just. Don't want to
dramatic backstory.
Yeah, it's just like, I mean, that's kind of like the one area where it's like, oh, like Makoto Yukimura does decide to try to say something is like the Fee Carmichael stuff, right? But
weirdly, like I think in some ways, like that hit better for me than El Tanika, this third world country we made up. Right?
Yeah,
because Fee's backstory is like being black in the American South.
Yes. And it turns out not much has changed in 2050.
Exactly. Right. Yeah, it's interesting. Also, I might as well be a completely different character. Like,
yeah. That's definitely. I mean, yes. There's. I mean, there are those weird shifts, right? Like Yuri is basically non-existent in the manga. None of the Division 2 exists in the manga, right?
Nope.
Hachi is definitely like I guess that's also one of those things, right? Where it's like
a lot of the same stuff happens, but the context is so different that
and I think it's like Hachimaki's personality shift in the anime feels jarring, whereas like in the manga, it's like, oh, he was always kind of this like nihilistic shithead from the start, and so it's not as jarring in some ways in the manga.
Right.
Like, I mean, God, the manga has a moment where like a dude is basically like, don't you care about like the suffering in the global south? And Hachimaki says, no, I don't actually. Like, just looks into the camera and says, I explicitly do not care about the suffering of the global south.
Yep, that has nothing to do with me.
And it's like, shit, okay, well, that's your character from chapter 3. No wonder why you become that guy in the anime. Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. So it's both of these have been interesting in seeing how things were adapted back then. I don't know that you would get this kind of adaptation now where it's basically they take the basic plot and then completely like take it their own direction.
Maybe that is the most interesting thing about Planets and Standalone Complex. Like, we didn't really have a thematic link between these two other than popular early 2000s sci-fi shows that G liked a lot as a kid. But going back, it's like, yeah, we don't adapt anime or we don't adapt manga like this anymore. Like, this is the era of Full Metal Alchemist 2003. Like,
yes, where you have Arakawa saying, come up with your own thing. I want it to be very different from what I'm doing.
Yeah, well, we all saw how that turned out.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like, and these days adaptations are even more common now than they were in 2005. And like, for the most part, they tend to be pretty accurate, or at least they tend to be pretty parallel to their source material, to the point where it's like big changes are often seen as like, an offense to the source material.
And usually the changes are just done to like for time or something. Right? It's not like
perhaps conservative would be the best way to describe modern adaptation.
It's easier to turn out your Naruto slop when it's fucking you just follow it to the letter. I don't know. But yeah, it's interesting. It's like we talked about with Ghost. Yeah, like we talked about Ghost in the Shell. Like multiple creators have put out their quote unquote versions of it that have all been quite different in their own ways. And then yes, watching Planetes, where the manga and the anime are quite different in what they decide to focus on and how they decide to interpret the same themes. It's like, damn, I don't know what. I don't know what does that anymore.
Like, all the Kyoto Animation adaptations.
I guess they're the last holdout of that, right?
I suppose you're right. Yeah.
But they make drastic.
You're right.
But broadly speaking, yes, we don't see that very often anymore. All right. Well, what you guys? You said you're doing the next part of Ghost in the Shell, right? And then you got anything else coming up on the backlog?
I've got a few things on the short list.
Right. Nothing to officially announce yet. Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's move on now that we've wrapped up last season in our backlog, to our new shows for spring 2025. So like we said, there's still things coming out right now. We're kind of right in the middle of it since we're recording on Sunday. So there are some shows that have come out that we wanted to talk about, though. And we'll start with Rock is a Lady's Modesty. I keep wanting to say Majesty. I feel like that sounds better, but it is Rock is a Lady's Modesty. If you recall from our preview episode last time, this is the show where it is like the framework is like some sort of shoujo anime set into some, Ojo-sama school where everyone is very catty and very gay, and there's a lot of like drama as these proper ladies are trying to vie for their position in society and all that,
acting according to their station,
and
what have you.
In this one they're all competing to be the Yamato Nadeshiko, or noble maiden. And the twist is that at least two of them that we've seen so far are very much into like hard rock metal music. And you remember last time we asked the question, and this sounds terrible again, out of context, but how much mental illness is in the show, and I said not enough. I was wrong.
Oh, is the answer too much?
Maybe.
Are these girls sick? Brackets complimentary.
So, all right. While the show does not go to the same levels of absurdity, I think it's fair to say I was starting to think about Kakagurui.
Oh shit! Wow. Okay, now that's a comparison to me.
Right, not Girls Bank Cry.
No, this is a different kind of.
This is Joker crazy.
Yes.
Oh yeah, that's a different type of girl sickness.
This is a different. We've gone in a different direction.
Okay.
In fact, are we going to have to extend the evil women discourse?
Yes. These are they're bordering into evil woman territory.
Okay.
In fact, even the two main girls kind of remind me of the two main girls from Kakagurui. They even look kind of similar.
Yeah.
Okay.
That you've got the kind of main character, more of the point of view character, is the blonde twin tail girl.
Sure. Yeah.
We don't get her whole story, but it's implied that she had like a more normal upbringing and only recently got into this Ojo-sama school, and she very desperately wants to become the noble maiden, but we're not like given any explanation why yet, right? But she's here to become the noble maiden, and like we hear a lot of her inner monologue as like everyone's being like super polite and everything, and she's in her head, she's like, God, why do I have to do this? I hate this so much, right? and we find out later that her dad was like some sort of like musician, and she is a very good guitar player, right? And she likes hard rock and metal and stuff. And she through various circumstances finds out that the other she's the second most popular girl in school, and that the most popular girl in school, who is this tall, beautiful girl with long black hair and a hime cut, and seems perfect. She finds out that she has like this secret other building in the school that she goes and practices her drums. She's a drummer, and the episode ends with them having a showdown where I don't know how to explain this.
Okay.
They have a very adversarial relationship. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
All right.
How many asterisks are attached to that word?
There's a lot of asterisks on this show.
Is it adversarial brackets gay? Adversarial brackets problematic?
Yes.
Adversarial. Oh, all of the above. Okay.
Adversarial brackets comedy.
So like,
yeah, exactly.
Again, you know how the main girl in Kakagurui like flips the switch when she's gambling and like
goes sicko mode,
completely unhinged. Like normally she's very like kind of sweet and even silly and like kind of airheaded, and then when it comes to the gambling stuff, you know, there's that face that she makes, and yes, so the girl that also looks very similar to her in this show acts like that, but when she starts drumming, like a flip switches, and she's like, even though the other girl's like totally shredding on guitar, she's like, you know, just starts cursing her out and how awful she is, and like, you know, you need to do better. And then the other girl gets pissed off, and then they're both just mad at each other as they're trying to outplay each other. And I'm like, okay, well,
this sounds kind of incredible.
It kind of is. It doesn't get to that until the very end, so I'm curious to see how much of that we're going to get like throughout the rest of the show.
But I mean, it's a first episode. If you want to get good at any point, it's at the end.
Yeah, it's like they build up to that, right? And so by the end they hate each other, but also they're like this close to kissing. And that's, I think, where we're headed. It's episode 2, and I'm kind of into it, if we're being honest.
Sure.
So, you know, it's not really serious. It's just kind of campy, and, you know, like the whole like Ojo-sama school aspect of it is like borderline parody. Like they know what they're doing, right? Like that is simply there to contrast to like the, you know, crazy heavy metal antics these two are going to get into.
A little self-awareness about that stuff is a welcome thing normally.
Yeah, and you know, the jury's out. I think we need a 3-episode test on this, but I enjoyed the first episode.
Sure.
And you know, we'll see how it goes. One final note I'll throw out there is they got Bandmade to do the music, which
is that good?
You'll have to remind me what that means.
Bandmade is like the like, they're not really an idol group. They're more like, because they actually play the instruments and stuff, but they're like a heavy metal
Unlike
band. But
most idols,
they're dressed like, but they're dressed like, you know, maids and other cosplay stuff while they're doing heavy metal, and but like it's very appropriate considering the subject material here of you know, these ladies in fancy dresses playing heavy metal, basically, or hard rock.
Sounds like they understand the assignment.
So yes, basically is what that's getting to, is they understand the assignment on this, and it was pretty fun.
Cool.
I think we'll just have to see again where we go with this, but I think there's some promise. Okay, so then let's move on to and Shirley, the remake of the Anne of Green Gables anime. I forget what the actual original
how green are these gables in 2025?
I mean, the original is called Akage no Anne, Redhead Anne, but
yes,
like, can you even remake something which is an adaptation of another piece of media to begin with? Like, it's just another adaptation, right?
Kind of. There's it's like cultural. It's like cultural telephone, right?
So for anybody listening who does not know, Anne of Green Gables has been adapted to anime form once before. It was in 1979.
It is more than once. Doesn't happen several times, even in only anime.
No, I think that's the only major anime.
That's like the notable like
anyway
cultural impact one, right?
Okay.
Yeah, it is one of the most beloved anime shows of all time in Japan. It has a complete murderer's row of talent who worked on it. It was directed by Isao Takahata. The first 15 episodes were laid out by Hayao Miyazaki. The character designed by Yoshifumi Kondo, and some episodes were storyboarded by Yoshiyuki Tomino. So it is a cultural icon of Japanese media.
And now we're getting a modern day remake.
And you know what? It's fine. It's fine. It looks nice.
I have no problems with it.
Yes, it is. there is a good performance from Honoka Inoue, who is playing Anne. She really goes for like the excited, over talking child approach, and it's good. I liked this first episode mostly, and and after that, I decided I would go back and watch the first episode of the 1979 show, and it's a lot slower. They only cover about half the ground of the first modern episode, and for the most part, it's fine. But about halfway through, there's a kind of not a dream sequence, but like an imagination sequence where they go through a field, through like an avenue of cherry blossom trees, and in the modern one, it's very nice. They go through, and everybody's cooing and marveling at the cherry blossoms. In the 1979 show, it becomes like this surreal fantasy dream dance sequence, and it is so much better than anything in it's only about like 15 or 20 seconds long, but the moment you see it, it's, oh my god, this is beautiful, it's gorgeous.
This is making me think of when I recently did the Ranma 1/2 remake, and I went back and watched the first episode of the original, and it was like, okay, well, it's comparable or whatever. And then there was like one fight scene in the first episode. I'm like, oh no, this is much better. Like
it was kind of that, I mean, I think that in many ways you could argue that this new adaptation is maybe better. It's certainly more consistently on model.
Right, the consistency is better. Like but the highs are not as high.
Exactly, right? Yeah. And this was only one episode,
right?
But
of course,
there is just so much more warmth and artistry in the old show, and I don't. Again, like that might seem like I'm saying that the new show is cold and shitty by comparison, and it's not. I think it's fine, but there's just very little outstanding about it. And this is kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation, because they're always going to be compared to the older show. And I think that there are legitimate arguments to be made for making this classic piece of literature again in a form that might be more accessible to, children of the modern age. But as a show, it just kind of struggles to justify its existence.
Yeah,
to me,
it did make me think about like, when is a good time to do a remake, if you even should. Like, I mean, I just mentioned Ranma 1/2. That was what, like 30 years ago or something.
I mean, there's like a
this one was like
45,
pushing 45 years ago, right? But just because it's old and popular doesn't mean you have to remake it, I guess. But I mean, there's something to be said for, Zig, you even mentioned, speeding it up a little is something that maybe needs to be done in our present day. But
I mean, there's also the fact that this will be a 24 episode series as opposed to the old one, which was 50 plus episodes, I think.
Right. Iro, were you going to say something?
I don't recall.
Okay.
At the time. Well, what I was going to bring up otherwise is, what else that old one has 2D horses.
Right. The lost art.
The forgotten arts.
Yeah. Of making horses in 2D. There is a 2D horse within 10 seconds of starting the episode.
Look, man, that episode, that one plot line in Shirobako will never stop being relevant. Right, we keep the OG San in the studio in the corner,
just to draw the horses.
Yeah, because he's the last human alive in Japan that knows how to animate a horse.
I mean, as I mentioned, it's a well-known fact that horses did not exist until Onimusha 2 in 2001. So,
right.
Yes, well,
we were never able to hand draw horses. I don't know what you're talking about.
I mean, like, the horse is kind of illustrative of a point, which is, in the 1979 show, the horse is frequently a little misshapen. It very quickly devolves into blobs in medium and long shots. But it is there, and it is part of the scenery and part of the picture in a way that is so much more tangible and real than the 3D horse in the modern one. There's also a very bad 3D seagull in the modern episode as well. Yes.
Oh, well, why a seagull? Man, like a horse, I get. All right, like as an artist. All right, as an artist, I can promise you this. As an artist, I promise you, listeners, I will never draw a horse in my entire life.
Will you draw the centaur mech from Galleon?
Sure, yes.
Will you draw a giant robot horse that a robot can ride?
Yeah. Totally different. Totally
different because I can fake the joints. Real horse, like a horse, like the reason why horses have become mimetic is because a horse is like legitimately one of the hardest animals to draw anatomically correct. Like the way they run is like there's actually a really fascinating. God, I can't remember it anymore. There was a really fascinating thread on Twitter years ago, probably, that basically got into basically until the advent of film, artists could not draw horses running accurately.
I actually talked about the horses being photographed running during when Iro and I were watching
then you
the
know
show.
this. Yeah, it's literally up until a certain year, before a certain century, painters and artists could not accurately render horses.
I mean, in fact, I will tell you the thing I told Iro, which is the first high-speed film camera was created to fulfill a bet which two people had about whether a horse lifts all of its hooves off the ground when it is galloping.
Right,
and nobody knew that until they photographed it fast enough to tell that, yes, it absolutely does.
It's like one of those just wild things, like, oh, right, without a certain technology, you just couldn't,
but
physically observe.
Get a reference.
The thing is, I absolutely agree with you, G. And as I said, I think the horse in the 1979 show often looks extremely dodgy. Sometimes it looks like a big bear or something.
Right. Anyway, apologies. I had to bring that up because horses, I get. Defendable. Look, the Part 7 anime is going to come out, and it's going to be CG horses, and we all just need to get over it and accept that reality. I hate it. I hate that Steel Ball Run is going to have CG horses, but there are simply not enough OG-sans left in Japan to do the full 26-episode adaptation of Steel Ball Run we all hope for, right?
In 1979...
But a seagull, yes.
Bro, I could draw a seagull from memory. It wouldn't look good, but you'd be able to tell I was drawing a seagull.
Yeah. In 1979, though, there were enough OG-sans to draw.
Well, back then they were,
well, they were not OG-sans.
Back then they were shonen.
Yeah. Strapping young lads, strapping young lad like Yoshiyuki Tomino.
It is hilarious to think he was storyboarding motherfucking Anne of Green Gables while he was writing Gundam. Gundam would start production like a few months after this. Right. Anyway, the point is that maybe I'm just old, but I prefer the analog imperfection of the 1979 show to the kind of polished production of the 2020.
Forget writing Gundam. He would have been directing Zambot or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Ends me.
Yeah. But I mean, I think that's a fair assessment. I don't think it's just an old good new bad thing. I think there is elements of analog production and creation that there is an indelible quality to it, and I think we'll definitely get into that with a later show here.
I mean, and just to kind of finish this off as well, I just want to say I feel really sorry for the production team because they are trying to recreate an iconic piece of Japanese media, and they will never be able to make something as good as people's half-remembered memories of when they were 7 years old in 1979.
And they're doing
unfair for them, right?
They're doing a great job. It looks in a bubble, in a vacuum, it looks great. It's just when you have that legacy to live up to is the problem, right?
Yeah.
It's tough. It's not a bad show. If you like this kind of twee classic storytelling, or if you like the Anne of Green Gables story, give it a go. Like I said, I think it's fine. It's just they're in a tough spot.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Like, comment, subscribe to the GLORIO chat for in-depth horse animation discussion. But yes. All right. Well, let's move on. This is the one thing I did not get a chance to watch. And perhaps speaking of CG animation.
Speaking of people not doing a good job.
Let's talk about Guilty Gear Strive Dual Rulers. I take it they did not break the curse of fighting game anime.
No, I mean it's
lifeless.
Yeah, it's.
I don't know if I call it lifeless. I found it more just bizarre. Like,
I think my main issue is like, I do get what Zig is saying when he says lifeless.
Yeah.
Like, there's kind of a weird lack of verve to what.
There's a lack of animation.
Yeah, like there's a lot of panning stills, which is like, what the hell are we doing, guys? Like, it's Guilty Gear. Like, it is the most like. Okay, so go back to square one. Guilty Gear Strive Dual Rulers is an original Gaiden story that takes place between the events of Exard and Strive.
It's Exard Rev 2, you must be precise there.
Very. Well, Exard 2, it was Exard 2 : Revelator or whatever.
I think it's Exard Rev 2, but...
Sure.
Let's see. Exard Rev 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
But anyways, so this is kind of meant... I think in theory this is supposed to be the, like, oh, this is an easy way to get into the story of Guilty Gear. But it's like, it's kind of not. Because, like... At first I was like, okay, when the show, I guffawed loudly when I saw the opening frame of this animation was a cave painting, because I was like, oh, we're going all the way back to the start, baby. We're going back to the dawn of mankind. The backyard has always existed as the font of it's like,
I am a huge fighting game story sicko because I have a problem. And even I, who has been playing the series for 15, 17 odd years at this point, even I think the Guilty Gear story is completely incomprehensible.
But here's the thing. I, as someone who completely agrees, if you put a gun to my head and said, actually explain the division of Arya's soul between Elfelt Valentine, Ramlethal Valentine, and Jacko, I don't think I could actually do it accurately.
Wait, you're telling me both of the Valentines are also part of Jacko?
Yes, they all contain a shred of Arya's soul.
Okay. Yeah. I knew that Jacko did.
Okay, but so does Judgment, who was the boss of the first game.
Right, but hasn't Judgment been destroyed or whatever?
But she came back in Exard's Sign.
Anyways, the point is, as someone who loves the insane anime maximalism of Guilty Gear, right? Guilty Gear has always been look, you got Ryu from the streets over here, white gi, headband, Hadouken, right? Yeah. You got Kazuya over here, he can do an electric, and he's throwing his dad in a volcano.
He has horns.
And then you always had Guilty Gear, right? And Guilty Gear was again, they admitted in interviews, they did not know how to make fighting games. They made Guilty Gear...
That's right. They went out and bought the strategy guide for Street Fighter 2 to
as someone who has played Guilty Gear 1, that is a fighting game made by people who do not know how to make fighting games.
But you know what they know how to do is tap into the morphogenetic field of anime cool. Right?
I think we need several inverted commas on cool there.
Will you tell me Soul Bad Guy is not the coolest dude in fighting games?
I'm saying that you need to very narrowly define your field of cool, but yes, I agree with you.
Kiss K's theme is be holy, and then in brackets, or be dead.
The point is that Guilty Gear has always known for being maximalist.
Yeah, and so... Yeah, right, exactly. And so to bring this all back to Dual Rulers, it's it's kind of stiff, right? It's kind of flaccid.
Yeah, it feels completely... It lacks energy, it lacks pizzazz, it feels... There is a lot of panning still and static frame and
it's
and even when they do move, it's not that exciting.
And that's the thing that's weird about it, right? Is because here's the thing. All right, we are deep into season 3 of Guilty Gear Strive. I'm not about here to put a target on my back and say anything about Guilty Gear Strive. I'll just say opinions on Guilty Gear Strive divided at this point in the game's lifespan. But what nobody disagrees with, right, is that Strive is bar none probably the best looking fighting game on the market, right?
It's up there, certainly.
Every character trailer, every super, every fucking ridiculous, the Black Magic Arc system casts upon that game to make these characters come to life in really well realized 3D, right? That's the thing about Exalt and Strive, right? About modern Guilty Gear is that they cracked the code on like doing the cell shaded.
They made the anime fighter in the 3D. Thought to be impossible.
And that has carried over into their other stuff like Dragon Ball Fighters and stuff like that.
Like it's one thing to like not necessarily nail or like have a confusing or like story that doesn't really feel like it's hitting the right points. It's another thing to not nail the Guilty Gear. Like again, people have thoughts about Strive and how Strive feels like it's kind of even neutered the like maximalist energy of Guilty Gear, right? Like you don't really have like, you know, the new Guilty Gear characters are not like chains and spikes trailing off the ground, you know, anymore.
It's a little bit less flamboyant,
but it still has like I think it still has some of that intensity, right? And the style.
Absolutely.
And I think the thing that really kind of confused me about the anime's decision, right, is like, okay, I thought, okay, this is going to be like our like we're going to get people up to speed on Guilty Gear, but instead, what they mostly focus on. I kind of get it. It's like, okay, you know what? The Guilty Gear story is too confusing. We don't want to explain what the backyard is or who that man is. So let's turn this into a star-crossed lover story about Kai Kisuke and Disney, right? And it's like, and the taboo that has resulted of the joining of a man and a gear. And it's like, that's a choice you could make for a Guilty Gear story. But okay, you know, look, soul bad guys here. Sin Kisuke's over there. Hey, look, it's Johnny. Everybody loves Johnny. Hey, Johnny shows up and everybody claps, right? Noya Wakamoto's here.
Noya Wakamoto is sounding pretty rough, I've got to say.
I mean, he
is an old man at this point.
He is an old man. You know.
But, you know, I love hearing him talk.
Yes,
yeah, we all do. We all do. And
honestly,
I love
Johnny is the one fun thing in this.
And that's the thing, right? Is like, you know, and Johnny showing up at a wedding is great because like you can make the insane argument that technically, by technicality, because of Johnny's stint as a patriarchal figure towards Dizzy during her time as a member of the Jellyfish Pirates, that Johnny is technically the most qualified person to walk Dizzy down the aisle at her wedding. There are hints of it, right? There are bits and pieces of like, oh, here's that Guilty Gear goofiness I love, right?
Yeah.
You know? But
like the new lady has a weapon which transforms in like 70,000 different
It's like a
ways.
fucking buzzsaw sword that turns into like a fucking laser crossbow. And it's like, and I think there are bits and pieces here that I think like, okay, I could like, this may not be good, but this could be the entertaining 12-episode Guilty Gear OVA that like becomes becomes Guilty Gear's Street Fighter the animation, you know?
Like the basic idea of Soul Bad Guy and Sin Kisuke going on a road trip to hunt down this crazy lady and coming across a whole bunch of the other Guilty Gear cast, that seems solid.
Yeah, I think it could work. It's just I hope this, you know, it's that thing of like, first episodes are kind of important, right? Because generally first episodes are where you blow your budget, right? It's like to make a flashy first impression.
Yes.
And I feel like this first episode did not, from a visual standpoint anyways, it's like did not really do that, you know? How do we go a whole episode of a Guilty Gear anime and we don't see a single Tyrant Rave or Ride the Lightning or I can't even remember the name of Sin Kisuke's super.
What, you're saying you weren't excited when he ran away from that bear for a bit? To me, the visual stuff is bad, I think, but I think more importantly is that the story just feels lethargic. You know, there is no snap and crackle to the presentation. You know, there is no sense of energy or excitement, and that's so important in something like this. You know, even in this first episode, it feels like they are going through the motions, and that's
a little
really
low energy. Which, I think it's just I would have. Like, I'm not expecting that one crazy-ass, like, official Soul Bad Guy AMV they did for EVO. Like, I'm not expecting something on that level, but, like, I guess I was thinking, like, okay, well, we're going to split the difference between that, right? Like, and, like,
I mean, I would have taken Here's How to Do a Fucking Super level.
with this with Typhoon.
Like... But there's not even that, you know. There's not even like scrappy underdog energy. It just kind of feels, and there is just too much exposition in this
weird amount
episode.
Yes.
There's so much just narrating of why stuff is happening and who stuff are. And like, you have to assume that nobody knows who Dizzy and Kaikisuke are, so you have to explain all of that. And
I barely know who they are.
Because it's not important for the game, is the thing, right? Like, that's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Guilty Gear has an incredible amount of backstory, and almost none of it matters because it's a fighting game. But because this is a narrative-focused thing that purports to be an official prequel, suddenly all of that stuff matters, and there's no real good way to info dump you on it.
And it almost feels like then it precludes this anime from just being the, like, haha, look at Soul bad guy punch guys thing, right? Which is, like, the, like, alternate, like, direction you can take a fighting game OVA is just, hey, do you want to just see the characters do the moves?
Right. What the, like, Street Fighter movies do, basically, right? Like,
with, like, cool new camera angles and, like, stuff like that. Like, what this thing needs is Garo vanishing line energy.
Yeah, I mean, look. Like,
wait, how come we haven't gotten Sung-Ho Park to do a fighting game thing?
Yeah, like Sung-Ho Park's Guilty Gear Strive anime is like would fix the world. It would fix me.
I mean, because like Sung-Ho Park, even by the ridiculous standards of anime salaries, Sung-Ho Park is too expensive for a fighting game.
Yes. Last thing I'll say that I did get a laugh out of, not intentional, of course, just because I play the game. Very funny for Jacko, of all characters, to tell Sin Kisuke, I really don't want you fighting somebody who fights that dirty. Really? You're saying that, Jacko? You fucking scumbag character. Fucking throwing out your little minions in your little hotel.
Now we're just getting into personal grievances here.
I will say, as a relative outsider watching the first episode of this, better than the Blaze Blue anime.
Oh yeah, I mean,
come on.
I watched the entire Blaze Blue anime. It sucked.
Was the Blaze Blue anime the one where episode 1 ended with like an apology?
Yes.
Yeah, I talked about that last time. Yeah, where they're like, "We're doing our best. Please keep watching."
It was so bad.
Yeah. Well.
I could almost guarantee Guilty Gear Strive Dual Rulers will probably not at least drop to those levels. Considering,
yeah.
Blaze Blue, perhaps the one fighting game that has even more impenetrable story than Guilty Gear.
It was literally made to be like, we have Guilty Gear at home because it's tied up in licensing or whatever.
As much as I made jokes about the division of Arya's soul and the discovery of the backyard.
How much do you know about the Susanoo unit or whatever the fuck? Right.
So
I could get into Blaze Blue.
Oh yeah.
The point I'm making is like at its core, Guilty Gear. Like if you really want to like you just cut out all the cruft of like the lore and like that man and like what happened to Japan and like the Secretary of Absolute Defense. If you cut all that away, Guilty Gear is basically just it's what they say at the start of every match. Mankind created.
Man, I knew they could not change society. Instead of blaming themselves, they blame the beasts.
Right. It's basically just an artificial person discrimination story across the course of like 4 video or like 4. Why did I say 4? Like 18 video games.
What happened in Guilty Gear 2?
All right.
Oh, you mean the hybrid RTS?
The MOBA? Yeah.
The game Daisuke Ishiwatari actually wanted to make before it fell, and he sighed and went back
We have to move on.
Let's move on.
That's going to be the only reason why I keep watching Guilty Gear, is so I have an excuse to keep talking about Guilty Gear lore on every podcast for the rest of the season.
All right.
Tell us more about that man.
Yeah. Let's move on and talk about Kowloon Generic Romance. Did any of you get to watch this? Or
I didn't get around to it. I wanted to, but yes, it's
okay.
I don't watch Kowloon Generic Romance. I live it, baby.
This is probably the best thing I've seen since. Certainly better than anything I watched last season.
Okay.
Which is not saying much.
Okay,
but,
not a high bar, but
it was pretty good. First thing that stands out. Well, all right, let's rewind, because if anybody didn't listen to our last episode, this is a story set in the Kowloon Walled City, ostensibly, anyways. And there's the main character is this hot lady that works at like the real estate agency that like manages who's coming in and renting, in the city. And
when does this
there's
take place then? Like,
I mean, assumably around the time when the city still existed, right?
Well, here's the thing. They explain in various newscasts and other things in the environment that there has been some kind of device that like can save your memories, and they don't really explain. What? They don't get into it in this episode exactly.
Is this the Matrix?
How things work or whatever, but there's some kind of sci-fi magic going on.
Okay.
And how this affects things exactly is not entirely clear in the first episode. It's a bit of a mystery. There is, so like they are living in the Kowloon Walled City. It looks like the Kowloon Walled City. I love that the art style is also like very late 80s, early 90s. The vibes are impeccable.
Yeah, that's definitely why I want to check it out, right? It definitely like nails that look.
And it's by the artist that made the author and
After the Rain.
After the Rain, so you can kind of see the similar, which also looks like a very much older manga than it actually is, right? And so there's this hot lady. She works at this office. She has this asshole coworker that she's in love with, which is kind of my biggest challenge with this first episode because I really hate him.
Oh no!
Okay. Are you meant to hate him?
He's supposed to be okay. There's a fine line between, because you guys know I love my lovable dirtbags with hearts of gold.
Yes.
But there's a fine line between that and somebody who's just an asshole that occasionally shows some basic human decency, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And in this episode, he mostly leans toward that side of it. He's very like, he says very like insensitive things to this lady, and is like, but then, I'll take you out to lunch. I'll pay for your lunch. And she's like, oh, yeah, I love him so much. I'm like, this is why? I'm right here. You could call me. But
so you're jealous, is what you're saying.
Look, we don't get a lot of hot. We don't get a lot of hot 32-year-old ladies in anime here. So, yes. So, but you're like, why is she in love with him, and why is he like so cold to her and everything? And then they start to throw in some hints that there's some connection between them that we don't know yet, and that she doesn't remember. And it finally falls apart where she finds a picture in his desk of them both like together, and like she does some research, and it's like a picture they took when they got engaged, but she doesn't remember this ever happening. And that's kind of where the episode ends. And it kind of hints at there's, some kind of, and we know it's sci-fi shenanigans because they explain later there's some kind of like, device that's, you literally see floating over the city at some point, that's controlling, is it time or whatever? Who knows what's going on? But there's something going on that's like, affecting the city. And it's like, does the city even exist anymore? Are these people real?
Are they in a simulation?
Yeah, like we don't know.
Are there some tall, pale dudes going around telling people to fall asleep?
So far, no. But yeah, it's just a very interesting, like,
it sounds fascinating. Honestly.
Yeah, it's a very interesting, like, you kind of got the vibes and sort of like this slice of life of like, hey, they're running, because most of the actual content of the episode is them just going about doing their job, and some of that is like cleaning up the apartments to rent them out, or like very mundane things going on, eating a lot of very greasy, amazing looking Chinese food, that kind of stuff. And then you contrast that with this sort of like creeping feeling of that maybe none of this is real, or maybe if the city's real, maybe she's not real, or she's a copy of somebody, or who knows what's going on, right? There's like question, there's like mystery.
I do love weird kind of
underlying
like
it all. And I just so like I said, my only thing I didn't like, I don't like the main guy. Like I said, he's very like there's one bit toward the end of the episode where he's like taking a nap and he wakes up and then he just like grabs her and kisses her, and like she's like while she's like struggling to get away and stuff, and like and then he's like, oh sorry, wrong person or whatever, like implying that and I'm like, but if it's panning out the way I think, where he probably knows the truth and that like maybe this is like a different person using that taking the appearance of the person that he's actually in love with, or there's a lot of ways you could spin that, right? Like maybe that's why he's so dismissive of her, because it's not the person that he's really in love with, or whatever. There's a lot of ways you could spin that.
I mean, given that it seems like there's some memory manipulation stuff going on, right. I think there's enough room for the show to say that actually you were not meant to think this stuff was cool or romantic. I just hope it does.
Yeah. But I mean, but then she literally has a bit where it's like, he does like one slightly nice thing, and she's like, in her head, she's like, "Oh man, I really love this guy," and I'm like, "What? Why?" But that could be like maybe that's some of that memory is still there from a different time or something. Who knows, right? Like it might just be based on what we've seen in the episode. So who knows? There's a lot of things going on underneath the surface which make it interesting, and combined with the impeccable vibes, I really enjoyed it.
You've definitely persuaded me to check out this episode.
I think it's definitely worth checking out. Whether or not it will stay good, we'll see. But, we'll give it the 3-episode test, but
because like I'm not normally like a standard romance show guy, but knowing that there's like a cool maybe like sci-fi mystery element to this, that makes me much more interested.
Yeah, it feels
it's about adults also, right?
Yes, always a bonus.
Yes, they are actual adults, like really in their 30s, right? Like, but it's to that point, Zig. It feels like more of a combination of some kind of slice of life type of romance story with like. I think the sci-fi elements will be a pretty prominent part of it at some point.
Yeah. I have one more question before we finish up, which is, what's the portrayal of the walled city like? Because in recent years, there has been an alarming portrayal to portray the walled city as kind of like, oh, this happy, chummy neighborhood where everybody along and
okay. So yes, that is what they're kind of doing with this.
I accept that there is an out that this could be a false simulation. So.
I think, because they're very specifically, the main guy's talking about like how this is supposed to be a nostalgic place or something. So I think there is some room for it to be like, this is not reality, right? This is a nostalgic reconstruction of the
cool aesthetic parts of
right, only the cool aesthetic parts, and not the reality of what.
I'm just saying the reality of the walled city was my grandmother always told my mother to never drink anything in the walled city because of fear of contamination from the factory runoff. So
right, it's like the realities, of course, like people do not necessarily choose to be there, right?
Yes.
Like this is
one of the grimiest places on earth at the time.
And I think there's this kind of like I don't even want to like necessarily like I don't think this is necessarily like a fault solely of Kowloon generic romance or even a fault to even begin with. But I think it's like we're going long here, so I'll just say I think there's a somewhat common trope, right? Like you see this in like in Final Fantasy VII with like Sector. Is it Sector 7? It's Hole in Dorohedoro. There is often this almost like desire to like thematically link like, yes, the place may be run down and dirty and horrible to live in, but like to contrast the like resilience of the human spirit in spite of it, right?
That's kind of what they're going for.
And there's also the fact that the walled city is about as close as humanity has genuinely ever gotten to like Judge Dredd Mega City 1 vibes.
Right. It's an evocative image, for better or worse.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on. Did you guys want to talk about your Forma
Sure. I mean, speaking of a cyber, I mean, well, another futuristic show that doesn't feel very futuristic, potentially.
Okay.
You know.
Did you guys buy a Samsung TV or refrigerator to watch this?
No. I watched it in the reflection of my dishwasher. Actually.
Yeah. So yes.
Yeah.
You flew to Korea to go to
Yeah.
For the listeners, apparently, I haven't checked if it's streaming anywhere else, but apparently the official stream is like on Samsung TV or something for your Forma, the anime. But this was the not Psychopaths one, right? Is that
kind of?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like not Psychopaths, not It Invaded. It is doing the like crime story with a twist thing that anime loves to do. Basically, the concept is like, what was it, like viral and God, I can never pronounce it correctly. Eero, help me out here.
It's syphilitis or like
encephalitis. Yes, basically a worldwide pandemic like shakes the world, and as a result, a medical technology in the form of like a brain implant is like it becomes commonplace in this world, and this brain implant is capable of recording all your senses, basically. Like all your senses and memories are perfectly recorded in this implant, and
fed to an AI to be trained on.
Oh boy, I mean, yeah, there are elements of that, right? Of like, and in this world, this is how they solve crimes, right? Is that there are special people who are capable of performing brain dives. And reading and reviewing these recorded memories, and they use that.
So it's Minority Report.
It's Minority Report. Yes, this is the thing I went on a rant about in the previous podcast.
It's Minority Report. It's Psychopaths. It's It Invaded.
It's all of these. It's all of these, and it's a slow burn. Is I think the thing Eero and I kind of came away with it is like, this is not actually an It Invaded or a Psychopaths where like somebody gets fucking shot or some crazy brain sequence happens in the first episode. In fact, it's very in media res, right?
Yes,
it's like
my understanding is this anime jumps straight to like volume 2 of the light novel, and all of the dialogue is still referencing all the stuff that happened in volume 1, and we don't know any of that.
Right. It's doing God, what was that anime? The one about the Oni guy and the girl with the head?
Undead Girl Murder Farce. Yeah.
Yes, it's doing that, basically, of starting in media res. And I don't hate it because based on what we read about the first volume, it is literally just the like, we're assigning you a new partner. Oh, I don't want to work with them.
Andy's a robot.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, you know what? I think I'm good, actually. I don't need that to be the first episode of the show.
Right. We can figure that out.
It's like, so it's doing a thing like, okay, the human investigator, doesn't trust robots, but her new partner is an affable, handsome robot Ika-man. And together they solve crime, and they're hunting down like a serial, maybe not killer yet. It's like they say it's been attacks, right? Like, I don't know if anybody's actually been killed, but
right.
An amicus, which is their name for their robot like people, has been seen attacking people, and everybody keeps saying, all the witnesses say that this amicus looks like one of a limited model of amicus, of which only 3 exist in the world, one of which is the robot partner in this buddy cop duo.
Of course.
And so it's like, okay, we're gonna hunt down this guy because we get to prove our innocence, and that seems to be the setup, right? I think the thing that kind of like makes this a slow burn, and not necessarily in a good, not in a bad way, but not necessarily in the like I'm completely locked in, is like, in the same way that I think a shonen show, the first episode needs to end with a big fight, I think if you're going to do a procedural crime thriller anime, I kind of need to see you solve some crimes in the first episode.
I mean, there's a reason that most crime shows kick off with a very simply solved mystery that you can wrap up in an episode.
They couldn't even pull it off in media res, like
no, and that's like the weird thing.
Cut right
like
into
this,
that, right?
Like they start in media res, and then they just use the first episode to establish the framework of the mystery. And they're just like, right, and the episode literally ends with "damn," so that's our next case, and it's like,
okay,
but wait, it's
I was like, and they show her ability to brain dive, and it's like, I think that kind of like doesn't entirely work with me about the brain dive versus the great detective diving into the Mizuhaname in It Invaded is she doesn't actually do any crime solving when she dives into the people's brains. What they explain is instead that, like, her ability is, like, genetically unique. Like, not everybody can do a brain dive. And it's not like a training thing. It's like a genetic predisposition thing. Like, only certain people have the inherent born ability
way
to
less
dive
interesting
into people's memories.
Yeah.
And so all she does is dive into a victim's brain, looks around, and is like, oh, the last person she saw was the killer, then jumps out. It's like, all right, it's this guy. And it's like, so she didn't actually do any solving. It's just that her ability is unique. And that's not quite as exciting as, like, in It Invaded, where he's like diving into these like surreal dreamscapes, and he's like, all right, I got to figure out why I'm on a train, or why am I in the Kowloon walled city?
Crossover.
And that's my big worry, is if all that's special about her is just a thing she can do rather than her ability to solve these crimes.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know.
That's just, that's not interesting at all. Yeah.
I mean, I feel like all of these sort of psychic detective things hinge on suddenly something happening that they can't solve with their amazing abilities, right? Like, it's when that happens that the real detecting actually starts, if that makes sense.
And it's like, will that happen though? That's the question.
We didn't hate it, to be clear. Like, they do put they're like, I mean, maybe you can get to this, right? They do play with some interesting concepts in this, right?
Yeah, and what are you trying to get at with that? Like, at this, like, I don't know. It's fine.
I mean, I guess I was getting more at the, like,
just like, and then the robots are here, and they have the 3 laws. But then, if robot kill man, that break 3 laws. Like, I don't know. Which concept?
I guess for me, it was more the, like, implication that, like, okay, they've created this limited line of which only 3 exist of these are the androids with real self-actualization, right? They establish, well, I mean, again, we always must, it gets a little weird when they establish the humans claim that the robots don't have a soul, but they claim that most amicus are not actually self-actualized. They're just following a series of programming and algorithms, to behave in specific ways. But this special line, the one that was seen attacking somebody, these have real personhood. So they claim that these are either actualized human beings. And we only made 3 of them. And we kind of just let them off the pasture. Like, it's not like, these 3 are so special, we assign them to specific people. One's a cop, like, one's like, the 2 are just, like, out there, like,
yes.
And I'm like, okay.
It sounds like this is, like, just, it's probably fine in itself, but it's just, like, rehashing a lot of things we've seen in other places and probably done better.
Yeah. I need to see something, like, new, something that's new to me.
Right.
Yeah. Like, everything you've said are things of, like, oh yeah, we've seen that in other.
I mean, like, we're watching this,
but
we're watching this anime in which they play up a big aspect as though everybody has augmented vision, right, because of the brain implant. And I just looked at Iro and I'm like,
you just did that 20 years ago.
The laughing man cast a long shadow on Cyberpunk.
So, all right. Do you think you'll keep watching it, or
maybe in another episode or 2? Right?
Yeah, maybe.
All right, we'll see. All right, I know we're running a little over time here, but we do, I think, need to talk about Lazarus.
I think we do.
This, of course, is the show in which they've drug up the corpse of Shinichiro Watanabe to direct.
Wow,
the
that's
corpse of his
meaner
career.
than the thing I was about to say.
The corpse of his career. Let's say,
sure.
And
all right.
he is and. I will add, and then I will turn you guys loose on it first. But I will just say, if there's any question on who the demographic for this show is, which it is a very, like, it's supposed to be very, cyberpunk, whatever, and they're channeling a little bit of Cowboy Bebop with some of the marketing, but If there's any question who the demographic is, this is airing in real time on Adult Swim. I don't think there's any way to officially watch it dubbed in Japanese in America. So because you either watch it on Adult Swim, or after it airs, it goes up on Max, which is where I watched it, and you cannot watch the Japanese dub. You can watch it in English dubbed, or there's a couple other languages, but Japanese is not one of them. And the dub is not good.
Ooh,
I was
really?
able to source a Japanese language Trek one from where, I just don't recall. But
yes,
my Samsung fridge.
Yeah. Your Samsung fridge, you dialed it up on
in
there.
Korea.
But yes, the dub sound. I don't think it was intentional. The dub sounds very dry and lifeless, a la a dub from the 90s or 2000s.
It has incredible. If this dub came out in 2002, it would be an excellent dub. But
that's
by today's 2025 standards, it is not a good dub.
That's so weird because
everybody feels very detached.
And I think this will lead into the content of the show. I think maybe what they've been given to work with lends itself to that a little bit. But I hated this. But you know what, you guys talk a little bit about it first, and then I'll jump.
I did not hate it, but I didn't think it was great.
Yeah,
I don't know if I.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go.
Yeah, I was kind of bored.
Kind of.
I spent the whole time just being like, yes, they are doing the cool parkour that I'm supposed to think is cool. I don't really think it's that cool.
This show has massive "How do you do, fellow kids?"
Made in a lab.
This is not how do you do fellow kids.
Not even made in a lab, made in the boardroom. This
is not how do you do fellow kids. This is how do you do fellow middle-aged men.
No, I mean, what this is this is what happens when you focus test Cowboy Bebop. At the end of the day, this is what happens, right? And this is not to imply Cowboy Bebop was free of corporate influence or whatever, but Lazarus is such a nakedly cynical ploy to revive any nostalgic goodwill you have for Cowboy Bebop, and it fucking sucks. I'm Shinichiro Watanabe. I think you just need to retire, man. I don't think you have it anymore. Straight up. I've given you so many chances.
I think that I'm not necessarily going to go as hard as you did, G, but I think there is something there which is, although I have not particularly liked Watanabe's last couple of projects, stuff like Kids on the Slope and Carol and Tuesday, I never doubted his sincere commitment to them. I never doubted that they were the result of his artistic vision.
They're what he wanted to make, yes.
Yeah. However, so sure.
This feels like he's being held at gunpoint. So just like you guys went and rewatched the 1979 and Shirley, I quickly rewatched the first episode of Cowboy Bebop, and it's the thing I think what we're all getting at when we call Lazarus lifeless and focus tested and corporate is it's clearly going for that very cinematic style, right? The very right. It's shot kind of like a movie. It moves kind of like a movie. And
it made me think of the Chainsaw Man anime. Everything's got great. Everything's got a gray filter on it.
Right. The sci-fi world is not. It's somehow both bland and also iPod future in a really boring way.
It reminded me of the 2004 iRobot film.
Oh, yeah. Oh, jeez, you're totally fucking right, Zig. Oh, man.
All these extremely quote-unquote futuristic-looking cars that are just, there's no reason for it to look like that other than to make it look super future cool.
The thing that I think what nailed it for me is all of the action that was shown in Lazarus feels like action that would be impressive in a live action movie. It's shot like that, right? Yep. Look at all this cool parkour he's doing.
Yeah, look, it's just like when James Bond did the parkour or whatever.
God, yeah, and it's and I think that's the thing is Lazarus almost feels like it's a shame to be an anime. Like nothing about it leans into the particular strengths of animation as a medium.
Yeah.
And I think that combined with like the really bad pacing on this episode, right? Like we're introduced to our primary, our protagonist, Axel Gilberto, and like we set up the rest of the people who are clearly going to be the crew, right? But like none of them really get a chance to shine or like communicate their personality.
I don't know a goddamn thing about Axel other than I guess he was in jail for something.
Right, I guess he's like a chill, affable guy who's like he just can't play by the rules. And compare this to the first episode of Cowboy Bebop, where I'm going to give a quick rundown of what just happens in episode 1 of Cowboy Bebop. You establish Spike's flashback, which is like this, like, scrambled mess of what we know to be his fraught past. We establish his relationship with Jet, the vibe of the world, the rundown nature of the ship they're on, the rundown sci-fi feeling. Jet's like, I got green peppers and beef, and Spike's like,
you can't call it peppers and beef with that.
Right, so you already established their relationship. The acerbic way they bounce off each other. You set up the job. They got to hunt down Asimov, the bloody eye dealer, and you have his pregnant wife Katerina. So you're already also setting up this like bittersweet story that is very much evoking that sort of like hard-boiled crime drama that Cowboy Bebop is like drawing upon. You have like the really fun kinetic way Spike fights, right? Like he's like flipping around, moving stuff around, right? The Jeet Kune Do thing, right? Like it's very kinetic and it is very choreographed, like a martial arts movie. But the timing and the way he moves is still leaning into the strengths of animation.
And also, sorry to interrupt you, G, but also the shot choice is so interesting in Cowboy Bebop. I felt like this episode of Lazarus was just uniformly shot with the most boring possible angles.
Definitely.
There's not an interesting angle or a cool shot
there are shots
like a nice pull or anything.
Right. Like there are shots in Lazarus that feel like just drone footage. And it's like, why would you do that in an anime? Like a drone footage shot makes sense in live action to a certain extent, but like in an anime, it's like, why would you zoom out that far? Like from the thing we want to look at, which is like the fun of human motion, right?
Yeah.
And
then, well, G, if you want to finish your point on the Cowboy Bebop.
Okay, so the last thing I'll say is, and then the episode ends, right? Like Spike, like we have a slightly sympathetic look at like this drug dealer and his wife, but at the end of the day, Spike is a bounty hunter. He's here to get that bounty, right? Like he has his own reasons for what he does. You get this big exciting chase, right? And then it ends with the drug dealer and his wife kind of like doing their like Bolivian stand as they charge a police blockade at the end before they get gunned down tragically. It's bittersweet, right? And the episode ends with Spike going back to the Cowboy Bebop, the ship, and like Jet's there to make some more bell peppers and beef, and it's like a self-contained, like it's a day in the life, right? Yeah. Like that's what the first episode of Cowboy Bebop is. You establish the dynamic, the characters, the world, the tone.
And you establish the storytelling style as well. You establish the violence, the pathos, the kind of like grittiness, but also the playfulness. There is a mission statement told through the storytelling style. You encompass the full range of emotion that the show is willing to show to
right.
Yeah, and
I don't think Lazarus does.
Lazarus is here's 10 minutes of parkour.
Yeah, so like literally like this episode is 12 minutes of info dumping and 12 minutes of parkour. Mm-hmm. Way too much parkour. It's cool for like 30 seconds, and then once you're into like minute 8, you're like, oh god, just please stop.
Parkour.
Please just catch this asshole already.
The overwhelming sorry.
Yeah, and it's like, to your point, G, like they spend no time making you care about anything. The background story is given to you in newscasts and just people just straight up explaining there's this drug, everybody took it, and everybody's gonna die. They don't explain anything about his background. They don't explain why we just spent 20 minutes chasing him around. Like, why do they need him so badly? We have no idea.
Why him? Yeah, like
because he's a cool guy.
The one or two times
his dad. I don't know. Like
the one or two times they try to inject any kind of like fun, like when he like talks to the cop and he's like, "Oh, I'm not the criminal guy" or whatever, and they're like, is like, it feels like almost embarrassing when they try to do that.
Like it's like, again, it's like they're trying to do the like affable, like lackadaisical nature of like Spike when he's not serious. But it's like,
I think Zig, that's what you're saying with the like hello fellow kid stuff, right? Like it's like.
Let me put it this way. This is the overwhelming impression I get from this show is that it is trying desperately to be cool, and there is nothing less cool than trying desperately to be cool.
Right.
Exactly.
Like, I mean, that's a thing that it's like, I mean, you know, in that first episode of, I don't want to just be like a one-to-one, well, this happened in Cowboy Bebop, but like, you know, when Spike sets up the trap to catch the drug dealer, he's like hanging out in a poncho and in this oversized like sombrero, like it's comical looking, like it's like there's so much like it's a show that is willing to like make Spike be a little bit of a goof, right? He's a little bit
personality
of a loser, right?
To it, yep.
Like yeah, he's a cool dude. He's the best bounty hunter there is, but
it's more relatable to literally have him at the beginning be like, "I'm hungry," because there's the beef in this food, compared to I'm doing flips in my prison cell.
Like, oh my god! Like one of the funniest details I noticed in like the first episode of Cowboy Bebop is like they have this big argument how fucking broke they are. And they're like, all right, well, here we got a new bounty, 2.5 million Woolongs. Like, go get him, Spike. And he's like, yeah. And then right after that, scene cuts to them passing through
the
a space toll booth.
Yeah.
And it
cha-ching, 7,500
Woolongs. Yeah. And it's like, it really just established how fucking poor and run down these guys are, right? And it's just, man, I don't know. It's just Lazarus. It's like, I don't.
Yeah.
I think the world building on display here is also bad. I mean, like the moral dilemma here, like a dude invented a super effective painkiller, and the entire world got hopped up on painkillers, and now he's come back out of hiding, and he's decided that he's going to destroy humanity in 30 days. It's laughable.
It's so, because also like. He's like, oh, because us humans have, I don't know, destroyed the environment and competed over resources so that only the top succeeds. Also, I'm going to kill everybody who relies on
everybody. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
All these people who, like, in our montage, we had like third world countries and stuff being like, oh, thank God, a cheap medicine that we can actually use. Because, you know, it's like you're punishing all of the like lower class people.
There's some real. I read one book and decided that society is. I mean,
to take down the top, I'm going to break the bottom.
I mean, it's such a laughable like. I like. How do I put this? It's like Watanabe strikes me as like a fairly well-intentioned guy. Just the way he writes stories about like marginalized people, the diversity of representation in many of his works, right? Like I think Watanabe, he seems like a dude whose heart is in the right place about a lot of things. Yeah. This plot feels like the most like Japanese boomers' opinions on recreational drug use like I have seen in a while. Of like because you use the easy consequence-free drug, you all must pay the toll. And it's like, bro, like your boring exposition at the start claimed this was consequence-free that had no side effects. Like you can't.
Obviously, people would use it. Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
It's also just like such a cartoonish level of stakes. Like. I'm going to kill all of humanity. Well, okay, basically nothing you say can justify that. So there's no moral complexity here at all.
No,
because...
yeah.
Like I almost want to do a thought experiment of like, okay, what happens if it came out that every single person who's ever taken a Tylenol in their life is going to die in 30 days? Like mathematically, who would even be left? Like.
People who can't afford medicine, I don't know, like,
and they go to great lengths to emphasize how like the entire world has used this drug, and like, it has like spread across all of humanity. And I guess what they're trying to say is that it's become used recreationally. But
I think that's the implication.
I don't think they're trying to say anything. They need a MacGuffin for the team to chase after.
You know what? It reminds me of Kisniver, And that's not a good thing.
That's not
Don't invoke that name.
Sniper had a better setup.
Yeah, Sniper had a much more ambitious idea.
Sniper had more energy to the animation than this.
Yes. Look, the thing is, like, I don't like bagging on Watanabe. I think he has made some incredible pieces of work. He, like, even in the lifetime of this blog, he has made one of the best shows we have ever covered on this blog. Space Jam.
Straight up, yeah.
But this is bad. Like, there's no way to really pull your punches. You know, it feels like a contractual obligation project. You know, it feels like a band selling out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I guess cool visual stuff in the like logo design.
I like.
And who knows? Maybe the subsequent episodes.
That's nice graphic design. That's all I'll say.
That's graphic design.
Maybe subsequent episodes will pick up and will be proven wrong. But this first episode is bad.
Such a bad first impression.
Yeah.
Also, I'm now reminded. Hey, remember what the evil scientist who wanted to change humanity did in Cowboy Bebop?
Okay, turn into a monkey.
Yeah.
Now that's a threat.
Yeah. No.
Yep.
Oh man. Yeah, imagine that instead happens. Like, everybody who's ever used Hapno will turn into an ape in 30 days.
Rise of the Planet of the Apes.
Then perhaps we could arrange them into levels where you would have to capture them.
Oh man, yes. You're saying 240 apes escaped into seven jam-packed levels?
What I'm saying is that Shinichiro Watanabe should make an ape escape anime.
Oh man.
Well, yeah.
Also, just last note. I must admit, I am not overly familiar with the works of Bonobo or Kamasi Washington. You guys are not Yoko Kanno. I'm sorry.
Yes, we said we'd come back to that, right? Yeah.
When the jazz car parkour sequence starts,
that felt so. We want to talk about just feeling like sellouts, right? Like,
yeah.
Play the hits. It
didn't even really fit the. It didn't even really fit the vibe at all.
But it's just like old thing you like, so good now, right?
Yeah, it was like, was it supposed to be? Oh, isn't it so wacky that he can parkour his way out of jail or whatever? And it's like, we don't know him. There's no like.
Why do I care?
Fun or joy? Fun or joy to that moment.
Also, like,
at all.
Why are they only leaving one guard here to like stop this serial jail?
That's how Panopticon works, though, right? Like,
yeah, okay, but still,
yeah. There was no reason to do that other than, hey, wouldn't it be cool to do this thing that we know everybody loves so much from the old shows?
I mean, as I said, I respected Watanabe much more when he was making bad shows that were. Yes, I don't actually think Carol and Tuesday.
I'll say that. No, it's okay. Bad, Zig, right? I'll take the bullet for you. I'll say it instead. I respect. In hindsight, I'm sorry, Shinichiro Watanabe. You were right to make Carol Tuesday. It might have been a dog shit anime, but if you truly believed in it, go with God.
If all just sing together, ice will become good.
Ice won't.
Not ice. Remember, it's mice. Mars ice.
Yes.
God, yeah, right.
I'm taking psychic damage just thinking about that plot point again.
At least Carol and Tuesday gave us the fucking bullshit song.
That is true. They did give us the
which probably had nothing to do with Shinichiro Watanabe.
It probably gave us like the one Kimiko Ueno episode of Carol and Tuesday.
Yep.
All right. I think we've beaten this thing to death enough.
By the way, we will absolutely be watching more episodes.
Oh, yes, of course. No, don't worry, dear listener. We'll be talking about Lazarus every episode.
I'm dragging the corpse and throwing it in the dumpster personally. I don't know
damn!
If
all right.
I want to see a little more at least, so I'll watch another episode.
All right, announcing our next backlog show.
Oh my God.
Yep, it's Cowboy Bebop.
Oh God!
Don't be ridiculous, G. You and I know it's Samurai Champloo.
I'm working on it. I'm working on it.
All right. Well, let's end this episode for now. We'll have more to talk about. I'm sure there will be some other new shows. I actually can't think of any off the top of my head right now that haven't come out other than Gundam. But yes,
but we've all watched the first episode.
we've already technically talked about the first episode.
Yeah. I will actually be interested to see if that first episode cuts out any of the stuff that was in the
movie. That was my theory. Are they gonna even air the episode, what I would refer to as episode 0 part of it, or how are they gonna handle that, or is it just gonna be exactly as it was in the theaters? But we'll see. Anyway, let's do our housekeeping. You can check us out at theglorioblog.com, where we're starting to get, well, by the time this comes out, I'm sure we'll have more first look posts up. There's a couple out already, but read about all the witch shows. There's a lot of witch shows this season for some reason.
Read my first look of Petit Cure, Precure Fairies, where I lay out the various crimes of the Precure mascots.
Yes, the actual anime of the year, right? And then follow us on Blue Sky at GLORIO Blog. You can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music. I've read this so many times, you think I would have this down. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Podbean, Stitcher, and of course YouTube, where you can like, comment, subscribe, ring that notification bell. Tell us your either favorite anime from last season or this season, because hey, we're covering both this time. And tell your friends, tell your enemies, and we'll catch everybody next time.